Good afternoon. Muy buenas tardes. This is Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO, 102.7 FM, www.coopradio.org. This is the Monday Brown Bagger. I'm Alfred Weber, and today we're with our very special guest, independent scientist Leuren Moret, who has been an expert witness at the Tokyo International Tribunal for War Crimes in Afghanistan, who is here to talk to us about HAARP. Is HAARP a space-based weapon of mass destruction, and should it be banned by international treaty? Welcome, Leuren.
Thank you.
Okay, well, is HAARP a space-based weapon of mass destruction?
Yes, HAARP is a space-based weapon of mass destruction, and it is the creation, the secret collaboration between the Soviet Union and the U.S. produced this horrific weapon. And basically, it was put together during the Cold War, and it was turned on. It was called the Woodpecker Signal. It was turned on in the Soviet Union on July 4th, 1976, the 200th anniversary of the United States of America. And in 1978, the Soviet Union and the U.S. became secret partners to develop environmental weapons and weapons that could be used against the environment at an international treaty signing conference where 68 countries signed the treaty, committing themselves to not developing environmental weapons nor weapons to use against the environment. So the U.S. and the Soviet Union obviously had it all planned out, and they just wanted to make sure nobody else had this weapon, but they wanted it. And of course, these are the international bankers behind it. Basically, the ancient moneylenders going back all the way to Mesopotamia, the same bloodlines are still the moneylenders and bankers, international bankers, and their headquarters is within the ancient Roman walls of the Roman city of London, and it's about a square mile. And I believe it's really the only sovereign nation in the world. They do whatever they want. They have developed ever more and more destructive and horrific technologies of war to use as weapons blackmail, nuclear blackmail, and now it's HAARP blackmail in order to extort cooperation and as much money as possible from other countries. It's a permanent war economy, and maybe you would like to say a few words about that.
Well, just that the product of the permanent war economy is just that, it's war. It exists to create war, and it does so by manipulating the Hegelian dialectic of opposites, and it does so from this, as you said, 677-acre quasi-independent jurisdiction at the heart of London called the City of London, which is ruled over by a committee of 12 banks, led by the Bank of England, but mediated by the House of Rothschild, whose fortune has been reliably now statistically studied and determined to be $100 trillion. And that compares to the second largest organized criminal syndicate, which is the North American Rockefeller Syndicate, whose fronts are things like the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations. And their net worth, they are City of London subcontractors in North America, has been statistically estimated at 1/10 of that, $10 trillion. So you can get, that is how the world is run, how the permanent war economy is run from the City of London. Now, I'm just going to say that and hand it back to you, Leuren.
Oh, thanks. Yes, and the way that these entities make their money, well, first of all, the way that the ruling elites stay in power, claiming their divine right to rule over ordinary citizenry, and it's a very, very small group, maybe 100,000 people around the world, who have total control over 6 billion people. It seems unlikely that anything like that would be possible on such a scale, but indeed, that's exactly what they've engineered over centuries and millennia. And these entities like the fast buck. They like lots of money. They don't like to work for it, and so they're very, very predatory. The activities they make their money on are sex trafficking, arms trafficking, drug trafficking, organ trafficking, alcohol trafficking. The prohibition was even engineered by the City of London to make huge profits in liquor sales. And so they don't really like to work very hard, but they like to live off of other people's hardly earned earnings. And so the HAARP project, which is HAARP, is the acronym for the High Auroral Atmospheric Research Project. And it's a huge, huge antenna array on the ground. The one facility, the U.S. facility, is in Alaska. There's another one in Greenland. The Russians have one in Newfoundland, and the British have theirs in Norway. At least a former naval intelligence officer mentioned the Russian and British ones. There's also a facility that's under construction at Pine Gap in Australia. Puerto Rico was also one of the early sites. So this is a global system, and basically it was upgraded from over-the-horizon radar at the Soviet Duga-2 iron yard, and designed in 1970, the Soviets said, to detect enemy missiles within 2 or 3 minutes. And then the Soviets built 26 huge transmitters. Each one was the size of a 2-story building at Nikolaev, which was basically a big radar center. This is a description of it, and I'm reading from my article, Planet Earth as Weapon and Target, which was published in the World Affairs Journal in the winter of 2005. Quote, the transmitting antenna was 210 meters wide and 85 meters high. The receiving antenna was 300 meters wide and 135 meters high. The antenna field housed 330 transmitters of about 15 meters each. These radars had to reliably detect group and mass launches of intercontinental ballistic missiles from the territory of the U.S. And this Moscow signal that was transmitted was discovered by the CIA in 1962. So they were experimenting with it even in the 50s and 60s. And it was used by the Russians on the U.S. Embassy. Employees were the guinea pigs to test low electromagnetic resonance effects in the U.S. Embassy. And at least 2 U.S. ambassadors died of brain tumors, and many of the embassy employees also were very sick. Some died. And these were the effects of low-level electromagnetic resonance, in other words, microwave. And what's very interesting is at that time, the frequency of the human brain was on the Moscow signal, the woodpecker signal. So there were many other applications which they weren't very straightforward about. In 1971, a historic conference was held in Warsaw, Poland, where Russian scientists presented a list of symptoms that they called microwave sickness. Now, some people may be able to identify ill effects that they've felt and think about whether they live near cell phone towers or near police antennas or military facilities. Certainly, this has been extremely developed now, and the cell phone towers are the most complete antenna network in the United States. So again, the cell phones were not for our benefit. They were sold to us, and we've paid for them, but they're being used against us. The symptoms of microwave sickness that the Russians reported were low blood pressure and slow pulse. Those were the first symptoms, and that would actually lower your body temperature. And even in Canada, on my speaking tour a month ago, people were telling me about the low body temperature, as well as friends here in the San Francisco Bay Area. So obviously they're being targeted with microwaves. Quote, and this is a quote from Robert Becker's book. He was an MD. The Body Electric. Our bodies are electrical systems. Quote, chronic excitation of the sympathetic nervous system, stress syndrome, and high blood pressure. This phase also often includes headache, dizziness, eye pain, sleeplessness, irritability, anxiety, stomach pain, nervous tension, inability to concentrate, hair loss, plus an increased incidence of appendicitis, cataracts, reproductive problems, and cancer. The chronic symptoms are eventually succeeded by crises of adrenal exhaustion and ischemic heart disease, blockage of coronary arteries, and heart attacks. And at that conference, the Russians decided to make very high standards, in other words, to really minimize civilian exposure to EMF that would be coming out of appliances and so forth. But the U.S. always disregarded it and has deliberately, it's very obvious now, set up the United States as a microwave hell for ordinary citizens. Now, the mind control is definitely part of this. And in 1971, even Brzezinski, Zbigniew Brzezinski, who's been the National Security Advisor, wrote in his book, Between Two Ages, it was published in 1971, quote, accurately timed, artificially excited electronic strokes could lead to a pattern of oscillations that produce relatively high power levels over certain regions of the Earth. One could develop a system that would seriously impair the brain performance of a very large population in selected regions over an extended period. And so under the cover of national missile defense, or ballistic missile defense, the U.S. and the Soviet Union were actually developing a global mind control program. And in 1974, Jose Delgado, who was experimenting with this stuff, said, quote, we need a program of psychosurgery and political control of our society. The purpose of physical control of the mind. Everyone who deviates from the given norm can be surgically mutilated. Man does not have the right to develop his own mind. This kind of liberal orientation has great appeal. We must electronically control the brain. Someday, armies and generals will be controlled by electrical stimulation of the brain. And as unbelievable as that sounds, Dr. Jose Delgado presented this in Congress, and it is in the Congressional Record, number 26, volume 118, February 24th, 1974.